Hi, I am Flower. I am here with Miss Parks.
Hi, I'm Miss Parks. I'm the school social worker here at E Cubed Academy.
Today, I will be interviewing you on food scarcity and community gardens um, pertaining to the increase of healthy food for those in need. May I ask, what are your thoughts on food scarcity?
I think food scarcity is something we definitely see in this community. At least at school, we have a food pantry that increases students and families' access to food, but the demand for access to the food pantry just goes to show how much need there is and how there really is food scarcity and like lack of access to consistent food.
Do you have experience in working to reduce food scarcity outside of the pantry for our community?
So a huge portion is the food pantry, right? And helping coordinate that, I help stock the shelves and coordinate that with Mrs. L and Mr. Vega. Outside of that, I also provide resources to students and families around food, whether it's food pantries in other parts of the community or there's churches or organizations that do hot meals, and so I coordinate with families to make sure that they are knowledgeable of those resources and can attend the one that they are eligible for.
Thank you. Do you know anyone else in our community who has experience working to reduce food scarcity? I know you said pantries and churches are a big help of it. Do you have anything personal, for lack of a better term? Maybe like a friend or a family member you might know that also has decided to help for food scarcity?
That's a really good question. I don't have friends or family that I can think of that are working around food scarcity. I do know there's a lot of government programs that work to address access to food, like SNAP, and there's one for mothers and infants, WIC programs, and so I have helped people apply for those resources. And I think there's a lot of really good work being done with like farmers markets to increase access to like locally grown food and like healthy food. And then in addition to that, I do know I formerly worked at 360, and at the time the biology teacher there was doing work around trying to create raised gardens as well. And so like they were doing some work to address food scarcity in their community. And so I helped with that with our after school programming.
Okay. What are your thoughts pertaining to community gardens?
I think community gardens are really helpful and important for a number of reasons. I think that, first of all, the idea of a community garden of people who live near each other coming together, growing food, that only benefits the community, right? Like you're able to get to know your neighbors and like build positive relationships, and that just strengthens the community. And also I think it's really good and healthy for people to like spend time gardening as like an act of self-care or a hobby, like being with nature, like, and seeing the outcomes, right? Like getting to plant a seed and see like, I grew this plant and now my family gets to eat this squash or something, right? Like there's a sense of pride in that. And I think community gardens also just increase the buy-in that individuals have to their community. Like if you're building something like a community garden, if you're growing something, you want your community to be taken care of. And like, I think other people in the community take pride in it as well. And then also I think it's important to have access to healthy meals, and healthy produce and locally grown stuff is great. It just increases people's like healthy diets as well.
Absolutely. Do you think community gardens have the opportunity to reduce or aid in reducing food scarcity?
I think community gardens could be an important part of like the equation of reducing food scarcity, right? Because I think there's important pieces like government programs that give money for people to go buy like pantry goods, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then community gardens can help increase people's access to locally grown food, and like I said, increase people's like pride in their involvement in their food. And I think there's also a part where there's like food deserts, right? Where like the only food available is highly processed or like convenience foods. And in communities where you see that, we want to increase fresh produce, fresh vegetables, and community. Is that okay? Mm-hmm. And community gardens can be really important in helping provide or helping fill in that gap where there's highly processed foods, but we want to see more local and healthier options.
Speaking of highly processed foods, do you think that a wider spread of the access to healthy foods, like maybe more community gardens or more government programs, could support the reduction of heavily processed foods? I'm thinking maybe the more healthy foods, the less you'll need convenience foods.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I agree. And I think the struggle often is that, you know, fresh foods, there's a shelf life, right? So you have to get them moving off the shelves or they'll just rot. Mm-hmm. Whereas highly processed foods can sit there for a long time. But I think having community gardens is a way to have access to fresh food or increase access. And in general, that's just better for our bodies, for our community. I think, you know, you think about students, if they're showing up having eaten Takis for breakfast, like they're not going to be well nourished in that moment. They're not going to stay full for long. And it affects your ability to pay attention, right?
I learned recently that your gut is key to how you navigate your emotions.
Right, yeah. And so access to healthy foods, I think, is really important for people of all ages, but especially students, so that they can be successful in school.
Absolutely. Do you think our project being making a raised garden bed and growing foods to donate is an effective enough tactic to spread awareness for food scarcity?
I think that it is a really good tactic. I think, you know, the part you mentioned about donating food is really important, because a lot of times when people are donating to food banks or food pantries, it's shelf-stable, non-perishables, right? And so being able to donate fresh food, first of all, I know people who go to food pantries appreciate it a lot, right? Because it can be seen almost as a luxury. And second of all, I think that building that connection with the food pantry, or being like, we grew these, like this is something that we are able to do in this area of the nation, and like that might help the food pantries spread that word as well to the recipients, right? That they might have another option to try and grow food, right? And not saying that it's easy, right? And it takes time, but it could be another way of increasing like their food options. And also I think by your engaging in this project, it increases your understanding and your awareness, and you're a person who talks to a lot of people, and so then that just continually spreads the knowledge and the understanding that we do have a food scarcity issue, and that there are a lot of different ways to address it, including gardening for yourself or creating raised gardens and stuff like that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do any ideas come to mind that you would think help support the cause to minimize food scarcity, or advocate for food scarcity, or the reduction of it, rather?
Yeah, I think as far as like the raised beds and the gardening, I think it could be really cool to get more people involved, right? Like an after school program around gardening and growing your own food. I think students often don't realize what a large voice they have, and so like self-advocacy in that way, like we do have the food pantry, and so like maybe connecting with the suppliers and saying like, we're really grateful for these items, these are the items our community would want to see. You know what I mean? Like helping address like the food scarcity in that manner. But yeah, I really appreciate the work you're doing, and like I think a lot of it starts at awareness, and then from there you can grow to like different action steps you can take.
Thank you. Is there any advice you will have for me, my partner, and anybody willing to advocate for food scarcity going forward?
I think it's important to like understand what the issue you're trying to address is, and like different ways to address it, right? So it's helpful to have like data, like what percent of people don't have access to the food they need, like how extensive is this problem, because that helps people like understand how important it is. And then in addition to data, having like personal accounts, and it doesn't have to be your personal account, but people who have struggled with food scarcity and how it impacts them, because then that helps make the argument more personal and like tug on the heartstrings, right? And then having specific action items. So like, you know, maybe it's around increasing the fresh produce that food pantries have, or maybe it's around food pantries and groceries stores should work together more to make sure that produce that's about to expire can get into people's homes instead of into the trash can and like be eaten and not be wasted, right? So like having specific action items, so it's not just like, here's a problem and we kind of have some ideas to fix it, but don't, you know, so people feel a call to action and feel like they can directly get involved and advocate for it.
Thank you. I'll keep that in mind, and I'll be sharing that with my partner. Thank you for your time, and I really appreciate your responses. Until next time.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.